Hi again, part E on the TIA videos. We're looking at traffic distribution now. So in the past video, we looked at site trip generation, how many trips are actually going to be created by our new development. Now we're looking at where are all those trips going to go, distribution. So how are we going to do this? Well, one really simple way of doing it, estimate, well, maybe about a quarter of them are going to go north, a quarter of them are going to go east, a quarter of them are going to go south, etc. That's a pretty simple way of doing it. And hey, that might work in some sort of approaches. It's a pretty rough estimate, but it's probably not going to be too far off the mark. Maybe we might adjust that estimate based on where the city is. If we've got a site here, well, it looks like everybody's going to be going in and out of the city, and probably not so many people going into the country. Now we might get a little bit more complicated. Well, if the freeway to the city is north of us, well, we're probably going to make an estimate that more people are going to go north than west. You can see how we're sort of building up this sort of estimate based on a bit of judgment and principles and all that sort of stuff, but it's still pretty rough. Maybe we might like to actually have a look and see what's going on out there under the existing volumes. Do a bit of maths and figure out, well, what are the percentages going which way. It looks like this one, it's pretty even. Maybe in the morning peak there's a lot of people going into the city, or did I point the wrong way? Anyway, there's a lot of people going east by the looks of things, and the other movements, well, not many people going west. That must be out of the city, but other than that it's still pretty even. So maybe that's a way we could do our traffic distribution. Or we might be able to, if we've got enough data, do a much more comprehensive approach. So again, we pull out, this is in Toronto once more, we pull out the Transportation Tomorrow data, we log on to their database, we run this complicated cross-tabulation to get, particular types of trips. So how many trips were drivers, motorcyclists, passengers, or whatever T stands for, that must be taxis, that started in the afternoon, and people were trying to get to their house in our particular zone where our particular site is. Here's the lovely map of Toronto, which gives you an idea as to where some of those zones are. So I think our site's in Planning District 1, but there's all these other different planning districts, and then there's further afield, there's more zones if you work further out of the city or live further out of the city. A useful way of doing it is to grab out Google Maps or something similar, and think of it as a red box around your site. And if you were trying to get all the way up here to wherever that is, that must be sort of like the middle of Planning District, I don't know, 5 perhaps. And you're trying to get all the way up here. You clearly have different ways of going. You can go south here and get on the freeway, and then up to DVP it's called, and over you go. Or you can battle your way up, I think that's Avenue Road or something, and get onto this freeway up here, or you can do a sneaky way through the middle. And it looks like they're all going to be about the same amount of time, about 20 minutes. So, maybe a third of people might go one way, a third the other, and so on. We're getting a sort of a reasonable estimate of how people might get around if they were trying to get from our site to the middle of Planning District 5. And then here we go, this is how it's all been cross-tabulated. So we're trying to get to various zones in Planning District 1, and this is these percentages here, the numbers that are coming out of our travel survey. So 2% of all of the travel in Planning District 1 went to Zone 57, etc., etc. Here's an estimate based on the Google Maps approach of, half of the people are going to go north on Church Street and half of them are going to go south on Church Street. So those people must be trying to get down to the freeway or something like that. And then you do some more calculations and it all filters through, and we end up finally with a percentage that says of all the trips, including the ones that went to Planning District 1, and the ones in the middle here that I haven't shown, which went to all the other planning districts in Toronto. And then here's the ones that went much further afield to other suburbs, miles and miles away. 22% of people are going to wherever HLDM, whatever that zone is. That's a lot of people going there. And then finally we get to the point where we are able to say, okay, 15% of people are going to leave our study area going south on Church Street, and 20% are going to leave our study area going south on Jarvis. So again, we've just built up an estimate after more and more sort of refinement. But fundamentally, it is, after all, an estimate based on our assessment of where people are going, which are based on engineering judgment with a bit of input from Google Maps because that's helpful. And it's also based on this survey data, which, you've got to be careful that you might be using a very, very small survey. So, they've only actually rung up 5% of the population of Toronto. So once you start getting down to these very small planning districts, you've got to be a little cautious about how much data you get, but you can see this is approach. And so, you end up with an estimate of how many people are going on which streets. Another approach is this sort of market catchment area approach. So we're building a new supermarket here as part of this new proposed development. Let's have a bit of a look and see where are all the other supermarkets. If you lived here in Baldwin Village, would you come to our supermarket in a car? No, probably not. You would walk to the Lucky Moose, whatever that is. Oh, you can tell we're in Canada, can't you? You'd walk to the Lucky Moose. Or, if you live over here near the Hospital for Sick Children, you'd probably walk down to the Market by Longo because they're really good. Whereas, if you live up here, there's not very many options. So, yeah, we might actually see a lot of people coming down here by car and driving in. Whereas I don't think you'd see too many people by car coming from here. So you're making some sort of assessments. But again, based on engineering judgment, you might have a business development plan for this proposed development that you're sort of getting your hands on from whoever it is who's the proponent. That might give you some ideas as to where they see the market. Again, it's going to be very, very dependent on what your development is. If your development is a proposed theatre and it's the only theatre in town, well, you'd expect people to come from all over the place. But if it's one of many theatres in the neighbourhood, or there's, it's a theatre that's movie theatre and it's the only one in this side of town, well, you're probably not going to expect anyone to come from the other side of town because they already have a movie theatre or whatever your particular development is. And then the next step, of course, is to actually decide what the traffic distribution is. So there's all these various ways of getting to it. But fundamentally, you're trying to get to this number for how many people are going to come in and out of your site in a car on which streets. So you can see here, this is the actual estimate that was included in the traffic report for Bathurst. And so it varies based on whether you're coming in or out, inbound or outbound, and that's partly because there's some left turn movements that are prohibited. So you actually can't get in or out from this side because there's turn prohibitions. And here we go. So every time we cross that red box, which is the boundary of our study area, there's a number that says, well, X number of percent of all of the trips are coming in on that street and that street. So why is this useful? Well, we've done our traffic distribution, which is the major input into the traffic assignment. Because now that we know who's coming in and out, or how many vehicle trips are coming in and out on which street, we can now start to figure out who's going to turn left, who's going to turn right, who's going to go through to get from the bounds of our study area to our site and in the reverse direction as well. And that's fundamentally the object of all of this. We're trying to figure out how many extra vehicles there are going to be going through each intersection and on each movement, because that's the thing that's actually going to change traffic conditions. And once we get far enough away from the site, outside this big box, we sort of go, well, that's how you're becoming part of, background traffic growth. That's okay. But we're looking to find out whether the impacts of this site are reasonable on the surrounding intersections. And so that's where we really need to know at a micro level, are there going to be 10 more vehicle trips on this through movement here, or is there going to be 100 more vehicle trips on that through movement here? That's the fundamental object of this entire exercise.